long day. Can't imagine why. Right, Coach Helen for YouFit Studio. Now, I said yesterday what I was going to do it on, and I am going to do it on what I said, which is, will a little bit more harm you? Will a little bit more harm you? Now, some of you screaming, yes, of course it will. Will it? Well, we're going to dive into it and find out. Obviously, as normal, audience participation is welcomed wherever applicable. God, so I've got a mystery person watching. Who it is? We've got a couple of people in Insta as well. Hey, so often, right, this is how a client, well, I'll get to the bottom of it eventually. This is where this comes from. A client would say, it was only had a little bit, or I only had a little bit more, okay? I only had a little bit, Helen, it was just a little bit more. Firstly, I will say this, just straight in there, the definition of just a little bit is always a little bit, well, never quite the same, I think, between two people. Let's start with that. Let's just define that statement and niggle it down a little bit. Just a little bit more, conceptually, if it is a little bit, what is a little bit anyway, in comparison to what you had the first time round? Ooh, it's like, what is life kind of question. However, equally, there's no answer to that one either. So principally, if you're saying just a little bit more, is a little bit to start with. However, what it really is, a lot of the time, when you get into it, and if we're really honest with ourselves, when we have a little bit more, it's actually a justification for wanting more, right? It was just a little bit. Actually, what I wanted to do is I wanted a bigger bit to start with. I negotiated with myself a little bit and had a smaller piece. Now I'm just going to have another bit anyway. So I'm just having more, which is what I originally wanted. So I was thinking, I was like, right, what is, if I'm going to be justifying a habit to myself or to my coach, say, right, Helen, it's just a little bit more, and that's a justification. Like, it was just a little bit, it just doesn't matter. It's just a little bit, because that's often what a client will, the undertone of the conversation with the client, or sometimes that's what we'll say, really. It was just, it can't possibly be that I'm not losing weight because it's only a little bit, and therefore it's not reasonable or possible that that little bit more made a difference between me losing weight or not, because it's justification for a behaviour or a habit, which is to eat more food, right? So I was thinking, right, okay, what is, I haven't done a definition for ages. So I thought, what I'll do is, I'll get a description of what that is. So justification is, get this, the act of showing something to be right or reasonable. So right or reasonable. So it's reasonable behaviour. So the justification behind, I only had a little bit more, Helen, it's not possible I haven't lost weight because it's just a little bit more, is an act of showing something to be right or reasonable. So now, like, okay, got me thinking of why having more becomes right or reasonable, right? I was like, oh, let's get deep on this. Let's think it out. Too often what really happens, and where it doesn't go according to plan, is the behaviour or the additional nutrition, we'll call it, is not reasonable and not in alignment with somebody's personal goal, right? So there's where it becomes a cross or a misfit of beliefs versus justifications, or some people call it excuses. I'm just going to use the word, right? People always have a stronger response to say, is that your excuse? However, if I said, if that's your justification, is it the same thing or different? Because in reality, if it's not reasonable in alignment with your goal, it's no longer really a justification for your behaviour. It only doesn't cause harm. Now get this. So it's not harmful if actually it does fall in line with what you want. And by that I mean it is actually a little bit more. Because, again, going back to my initial realisation, we've been doing this live, is that if somebody actually wants to eat more and have larger portions, and they're justifying not behaving in a reasonable way towards their goal, that's actually what they want to do. If someone actually has a little bit more, and it is a little bit more in reality, and that's factually correct, a little bit conceptually, then it's okay actually to have a little bit more. If Lady was here, she'd be like this, You can have more, yes, okay. A little bit more doesn't harm you if it falls in alignment with your goals and is reasonable, and there's the key word. And that's part of the definition of justification. If it is reasonable, it is supportive towards whatever your goal is. It's only when it's not reasonable that it becomes too much. And that's where there's a snowball effect. And you have to be honest with yourself about actually what you're doing when you're having just a little bit more. Because as we know, and I've got a few of these lined up actually in the next few weeks, all more food based again, and we getting more food in. Can't wait. Just wait for the one about Cocoa Pops. It's great. Tons of milk chocolatey. However, just a little bit more of everything through the day is no longer reasonable, right? Because it no longer falls in line with the goal you're trying to achieve. And so when a client will say to me, or I work with clients, they'll say, hey, it's only a little bit more, it is no longer a justification. If it's not supporting your goals, actually, it isn't justification. So the honest answer is that yes, a little bit more actually is all right. A little bit more is okay if it's reasonable and falls in line and is correct or right to your goal. Only when you go over the top of it's not. Ta-da! It was a quickie today because this one has been coming out a lot. It's just a little bit more, Helen. Just a little bit more. I only had a little slice more. It was a tiny slice. I had a little slice extra. And it's never in the photos, is it? Ooh. That's when I know. It's the thing. If someone has a little bit more and they show me the photo or they show me the diary and go, here is a little bit more, then they're like, aha. Challenge. There's a challenge for my clients who are listening and watching this. Show me the picture of a little bit more and see if it is reasonable or justified and it falls in line with your goals. Because I think if we're being honest, and I know from my own behaviours as well, again, having been a client, if I'm having a little bit more, as opposed to, I don't know, a giant having a little bit more, that's probably more what I'll be doing, right? So does a little bit more harm you? Still open to debate, right? So I said a quickie one today. I like a few. I'm not going to say that sentence. I'm not going to finish that one. I'm going to say this. It's sometimes it's going to leave you with a little bit of boom. Have a think about that, right? Because it is a think of this one. Lots of things we do to justify our behaviours. If you really pick at them and you're really honest with yourselves, they're not right or reasonable, as the definition says. They are actually primarily an excuse for a behaviour that we really want to do. And that's okay as long as it falls in line with your goal. If it doesn't, tomorrow. The cost of eating healthy tomorrow is expensive. Lots of other emotional costs, but the cost financially of eating healthy is actually quite expensive. So catch me for that tomorrow at 5. Until then,